From Fox 8 Sports, this is the Overtime Podcast.
From the Fox 8 studios in New Orleans, this is the Fox 8 Overtime Podcast. I am your host, Sean Fazende, riding shotgun next to me as he does each and every podcast, Andre Johnson
Jr.
You know the JR. Don't forget the JR because the JR is important. But before we get into today's content, be sure to like, share, rate, and review. And if you're watching us on YouTube, please do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button. Get the bell notification for when we drop that fire content. Also, leave a comment below. We love interacting with all the commenters and everyone that has been involved with this YouTube channel as we have watched it grow from its inception. It is Wednesday. Little programming note. This is going to be our last pod of the week. He and I are both going on different vacations in different parts. Well, I guess kind of in the same region of the country, but you're going with your family. I'm going with my family for the weekend. So this will be our last podcast of the week, and I am looking forward to closing out this week on a high note.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, and to the comment thing that you said earlier, a lot of cool comments under our last video, and it's happened under every video. You guys are awesome. A lot of great discourse between some people saying their team Jake, some people saying their team Spencer Rattler, but nonetheless an agreement that no matter what team you are, your team Saints, and that's why you're here listening to us talk about some of the most relevant and recent things going on with the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, and look, just you can have a feeling either way, but the best thing you all can hope for is a fantastic competition because both those guys will get better with a fantastic competition. We're going to talk quarterbacks again today, but not QB2, QB1.
Oh, yeah.
That's a little bit later, and it's rare that we go big picture when we talk Derek Carr. He is not the focus of the big picture, but we had to today because, honestly, I saw this happening in real time as I was out there at OTAs on Tuesday. You do your attendance check. A lot of people were there. A lot of people weren't there. But then I was asked about it on a radio show Tuesday, and then there's been a little bit of a follow-up chatter about it since that time, since practice ended and this one notable absence was there, one of a few. Why don't you give us the details?
Yeah, a lot of people at Saints day one of OTAs, about 90% attendance, but one of the biggest names on the team wasn't there, and that's running back Alvin Kamara. Now, after the session, we caught up with Dennis Allen, and he had a little bit to say about AK's absence, and we're going to show that to you real quick right now.
It can present some challenges. I'd say Alvin's kind of been in that same boat where he's been able to train and get himself ready on his own and be prepared and be ready to go when it's time to go. And so I think for me as the coach, I got to trust that that's what he's doing. Look, every year players go through different phases in their life, and then they begin to get other things that pull at them from one way or the other. Some may be positive, some may not be positive. Obviously Alvin's got a family now, right? So that pulls at him in terms of time commitments and things like that. So I think, it's not the only family we all have is the family here on Airline Drive, and yet that is an important part of all of our lives. So I think we have to be understanding of that, and yet I do think it's important to have our guys here.
Okay, so I was there in real time. I watched it transpire. I didn't really think anything of it. I understood what the reporter was trying to ask. I understood DA's response. Felt pretty vanilla to me. Felt pretty straightforward. Yes, Alvin's one of those guys we trust. He's going to be ready to go whenever he comes back here. Yes, I would like everybody here, but didn't feel like it was overly critical. I know he talked about Alvin having a family. I don't know. I don't know. I've never heard anyone kind of outwardly speak about that when it came to Alvin having a family. I know he has one. So that kind of is what it is, and I just kind of left it at that. And went on about our day for day one of OTAs, which there was a lot to talk about. And then early this morning, Alvin Kamara tweets out. Now, we should preface this, but we don't know. We can't officially say this was in response to anything that happened with the Saints or anything with Dennis Allen or anything with anyone about his attendance or lack thereof. But it said, as a grown man, it's not your job to try and paint a picture for another grown man, especially if you can't paint already. That was tweeted early this morning, Wednesday morning, then deleted. So
at 6:30 in the morning.
Where do we go from here?
Well, the real question is, how big of a deal is this? You know, obviously we've seen Saints stars of the past be a little too active on Twitter on certain things. And like you said, we don't know if this tweet is about the Saints, but when you couple it with the fact that Alvin Kamara is one of the biggest stars on the team and he's not there when you're installing a new offense, even if it is optional to be there, and then he tweets something like that at 6:30 a.m. the next morning, is that a big deal to you, or is that just one of those things you just let slide and keep moving?
Well, first off, it's not an unfair topic to talk about. It's not one of these things you can't talk about. It's reasonable to bring up. It's reasonable to suggest. It's reasonable to ask, hey, new system, new excitement, new this, new that. Where is the the running back, even though it's voluntary? So as for the question at hand, is it a big deal that he is not at the Saints OTA number 1? No, it is not. It's not. Voluntary is voluntary. Mandatory is mandatory. We've all been in those situations where voluntary means you can if you want. You don't have to if you don't want to. Mandatory means you got to be there. This is not a mandatory situation. And he's done this before. He's missed OTAs the year before. I believe it was the last 2 seasons, but I'd have to go back and check, so don't quote me on that. So, but that was within a system that he knew backwards and forwards, front and back, with obviously the previous regime, the previous offensive staff, and the previous offense that they run. So, big deal that he missed? No. Big deal that there may be an issue of perception from his camp and or DA's camp or Saints camp about if he should be there? Potentially, I guess. He's the one. He sometimes he's hard to read at times. Sometimes you're not really sure what he's thinking. But let's put all that aside and ask the proper question here, which is simply this. Let's not confuse, is it right or wrong that he is or isn't there? That's the wrong question because it's voluntary. He doesn't have to be there.
Right.
The question for me is, would Alvin Kamara benefit by being at Saints OTAs? And to me, the answer is an obvious yes. Yes, he would. This is a new system, and it's not just a new system, but one where AK should benefit from immensely, A, because of his skill set, B, because of his versatility, C, because new OC called his name out deliberately when he was asked about him, how excited he was to work with him, but D, at its core, the wide zone stretch boot system is a run-first offense, and it is a run-first offense and one of the most creative schemes and one of the most like I said, it's a creative way to run the football. It's not just line up, smash mouth. It is matchups. It is all those things. And he, Alvin Kamara, on the surface, given the player that excelled in that system for 2 years in San Francisco, Christian McCaffrey is the guy he's always been compared to, he should benefit. So, yes, it would benefit for him to be here. Why? Well, it's obvious. New language, new style of coaching, new energy, new details, something he called out several times last year after losses.
Sure did.
The lack of details, the lack of matchup ball, the lack of, attention to detail. He was pretty out in front, out in the open in many situations with the prior coaching staff about the lack of those things because of how much they had that before that coaching staff had taken over, the offensive coaching staff had taken over before Sean Payton had left, obviously. So it felt like last year the things he was frustrated with, they're working to fix right now with this coaching staff because all you hear, detail, detail, detail. I've told you many times how it just looks different the way they're doing the offensive drills, the way the instructions going from coaches to players. You talk to the players, they talk about the detail. You feel the vibe out there. They just feel rejuvenated, refreshed, because it's a new system, and it's a system that's had a lot of success. So, at the end of the day, you don't have to be there, Alvin, and you shouldn't be criticized for not being there, but see the bigger picture. Would you benefit by being there? I think the answer is an emphatic yes.
He would definitely benefit from being there, and we'll get to Derek Carr later, but one thing that Derek Carr did say about this new system, he said it's kind of refreshing that it's new for everybody. Everybody's making the same mistakes. Everybody's kind of learning at the same time. So with AK being there early to get those mistakes that are unavoidable, just in learning a new system out of the way early so that once you get to mini camp and training camp and preseason, you can roll. Sure, he would benefit, but I kind of viewed it from a different area. I viewed it as an opportunity for Kendre Miller because no Alvin Kamara, Jamal Williams also wasn't there. So instead of taking third-team reps like Kendre Miller would be taking if they were here, Kendre Miller is getting all the first-team reps. He's getting to work with Derek Carr. He's getting to work behind the first-team offensive line, the receivers that are going to be out there day one. He's getting to work with those guys. And about a week or two ago, we did a podcast about the 2023 offense versus the 2024 offense. And you said you felt like the 2024 running backs in particular would be better because of a leap that Kendre Miller could take. So Kendre Miller being in here and being the primary running back, getting all those reps in a new offense, that could help him when it comes to really figuring this thing out at the next level. We saw some flashes last season in the Patriots game late in the season, especially in the blowouts where he was able to get a little more run. So I see no Alvin Kamara as an opportunity for Kendre Miller. Now, if AK isn't there at minicamp when it is mandatory, if he's not there in California for training camp, we got a big problem. But for OTAs, the same OTAs he wasn't at last season and the year before, would he benefit from being there? Yes. I'm not panicking that he's not there right now. To be frank, I didn't expect him to be there. Only the thing that makes you scratch your head is that tweet.
Yeah. He deleted it. Who knows who he was talking about. But
maybe he was just painting.
With or without that tweet, I think this is a fair conversation to have. Like I said, I was on the radio, and the host I was talking to had said he had really went out of his way to criticize Alvin for not being there. So, we went and thought it over, and then kind of the rest of these events kind of transpired. So there are two lanes here. It's not mandatory. You ain't got to be there. So, these guys are grown men. They're professionals. If they've got things they need to do or a different way of doing off-season training that benefits their body to last for the longer stretch of the season, so be it, in particular at a position of high injuries like the running back position. If Alvin has a better way or a certain way he wants to do it to help prolong, his durability, to help prolong his career, so be it. But when a tweet like that pops up and then goes away, you gotta, and given how outspoken he was last year in certain situations and certain things within the organization, even though I thought there were times he himself probably wasn't playing to the level he should have played, you got to take it serious. So, or at least take it, or at least talk about it. At least that's what we do. So
For sure.
We'll see. I mean, there's still plenty of time. It's OTA number one. I know everyone's going to have a strong reaction to everything you see the first time you see these guys out there, but there's a long, long, long way to go. And Alvin is a smart guy, so he will learn the system. Just hopefully it's there's no, bad blood or animosity within the organization, because there was too much of that last year, and that has to go bye-bye. That has to go, because there's no room for that to have any success in really any franchise in the NFL.
Definitely, and especially at that position group in this offense, because the running backs are so important in every Kubiak offense. And last year, the running game just wasn't there consistently enough. They were 21st in running the ball last season, 18th, which is slightly below average the year before. That's mediocre. So to operate in this Klint Kubiak offense, and not just Alvin Kamara, but everybody.
Yeah, right.
As we get into the offense as a whole, even Derek Carr, as he starts to pick this offense up. I was listening to Jason Kelsey talk, the retired Eagles center recently, and they asked him about the Shanahan offense, not just Shanahan himself, but all of the coaches who have kind of come from that Shanahan tree. And he was like, as somebody who's played against them a lot, the way to stop that offense is to stop the run.
Yeah.
You stop the run and make them beat you as a drop back passer. That's the position you want to be in. So Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller, Jamal Williams, the success that they have running the ball, and the receiving, that's lanyard. We'd love that too. But running the ball, that's going to dictate how effective this offense is, Sean. And you got to see it yesterday when you were out there, and you got to see kind of how everybody was starting to pick it up and make those mistakes. And you see those light bulbs start going off. We heard Derek Carr talk about it for about 20 minutes. Was there anything you picked up from hearing DC talk about the new offense?
Well, first off, his on-field stuff was pretty solid. It wasn't, look, they were doing a lot of first and second down stuff, a lot of base stuff. I think I charted him at 6 for 7. Everything was first and second level. He hit 2 nice throws to Chris Olave. One kind of a square in middle of the field. One was a short kind of curl on the outside, but it was kind of set up to where Chris could take it and turn and run. It was a nice, well-placed ball. It was a really good leverage play by Olave to kind of get the defender inside so we can catch it on the outside shoulder, turn it and run. So it was pretty straightforward, pretty solid. Pretty solid, first day when you're not really doing a whole lot of elaborate stuff. But I really took note of talking to Derek Carr after practice, just kind of vibing it out. And it just feels like, to me, Derek Carr is in a just good place mentally right now. I felt like he's starting to kind of let out a little bit of just how difficult year one was here in New Orleans. Not just new team, new city, new organization, wins and losses, all the stuff that comes with that, but also family, finding places to live, incorporating yourself into the community. You were the face of one organization for so long. Now you're at a new organization, and just he said he kind of put off a vibe that felt like last year he was always playing catch up, where there's an established culture and he's joining it and trying to fit in. Where it felt like in year two, all the logistical stuff that comes not just with football, but in any walk of life where you change jobs and you change cities. It can be a scary proposition. It's a lot because you got to find your house, your church, and school for your kids, playground, all that stuff. And he talked about all of that. But now that that's done and settled, he feels like a little more at peace mentally. Now, what does that have to do with wins and losses and production on the field? I have no idea. I'm just telling you the perception I got from him while talking to him. Because last year was a very challenging season. And, that doesn't even get into the health issues that he had, the friction with teammates at times, the perception from the fan base at times, the intense reaction to his play at times. It just feels like year two in New Orleans, he just feels more comfortable in his surroundings, within the city, within the organization. And as I mentioned last year, we're just playing catch-up. And for him, football-wise, when you have that kind of stuff settled, and look, to be fair, every free agent has to deal with that. It's not just Derek Carr, so he can't just use that as the excuse. But I do think he's just being honest about what he went through last year. But football-wise, I do think in his head there is a genuine, very genuine sense of excitement about this new system because it is a new system that has been very successful around the NFL. New ideas, new language, new way of coaching, new instruction. As I mentioned before, details. Derek Carr said that quite a bit when he spoke with us after practice on yesterday. On Tuesday, excuse me. So I think Derek Carr, my perception is, I didn't get a whole lot of it on the field. It was fine. It was a normal day, nothing too great, nothing terrible. It was just pretty rock solid right through the middle. But perception of where he's at, just place as a Derek Carr New Orleans Saints, member of New Orleans Saints organization in year number 2, it just feels like he's in a little bit more of a comfortable place. Hopefully, those types of things can help him be in a better spot mentally when football season comes around and he plays better and he can do all the things he has to do. But there does seem to be a genuine level of excitement for him to learn this system, be a little more engulfed in the city of New Orleans, a little more comfortable in the city of New Orleans, and hopefully that means more success. It's May. We don't know. We don't know how it's going to go. Everybody's feeling good in May. We know that. But that's just kind of the vibe that I got. We'll see if it's right. We'll see if it's wrong. And just by no means am I saying, he's comfortable with his house and his kid's school now, he's going to have a great season. Please do not misread that. But I do think he was pretty open about how hard it was on his family, the move and the settling in and all that stuff. So I thought it was an interesting Q&A with him. And on the field, it looks like he's excited to dive in, not just individually, but collectively. That's the other thing he said. They're all learning this together, growing together, as opposed to everyone knowing it last year. Now he's trying to play catch up as the quarterback, franchise quarterback, who's just signed, one of the richest contracts in team history. So I think all in all, it was a pretty honest Q&A with Derek Carr, and hopefully he just this good spot that he's in mentally right now will translate and they can do something on the field to have more success.
And I think that comfortability that you mentioned, not just with the city, but with his team, leads him to do some things that maybe he wasn't comfortable or able to do last year in just arriving to the city, figuring out where you're going to live, getting the vibe with your new team, your new teammates, and that's something he talked about. He mentioned that during this process, you're very limited on the amount of work that you can do with coaches.
Yeah.
On field with coaches, you're very limited because of OTAs, but there is no limit on what players do with players.
Yeah.
So he mentioned that during this time, he's been working not just with his running backs and his receivers, but he's been working with pretty much every position group. He's been being the guy who, I don't want to say a coach, but the guy to really lead those guys. And this is when the real leaders step up and differentiate themselves, is when the coaches aren't around or when you can't step on the field with Kubiak and he can't help you figure stuff out, especially with a relatively young team.
Yeah.
Chris Olave young, Rashid Shaheed young, Kendre Miller's young. You got a lot of young offensive linemen. You've even got some youth on that defense. So with a pretty, I don't want to say a young team because the Saints are still one of the older teams in the league, but with a lot of young guys on the team who you're going to expect to step up and play big roles on this offense, Derek Carr having the comfortability to grab those guys and say, hey, until we can get with the coaches, I'm your coach. I'm the guy who's going to help you get to that next level and start figuring this thing out. And now that they're starting to plant the seeds of this new Kubiak system and Derek Carr can start to get that in his head, he can start implanting that in everybody else's head. So I think that comfortability for Derek Carr really only works in everybody's favor.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. If you got your quarterbacks at kind of a peace of mind and he's, in a good spot, it can't be a bad thing. I mean, it can't be a bad thing. But like we said, ain't gonna matter if he throws 3 interceptions in the opening week. It's one of those things where he's got to bring it on the field. He's got to prove worthy of that contract. He's got to prove that he can be the leader that this team needs, and hopefully get him back into the postseason. My friend, we've reached the end here. I think we've had a nice, solid week, another good week here in the city of New Orleans. Anything else for us today?
We are good. It's vacation time.
It's vacation time. All right.
I got to go pack.
All right, you go pack. I'll go pack. We'll be back next week. So, Andre Johnson Jr., I am Sean Fazende. We'll catch you guys next time on Overtime.